Okay, so the assignment for Act 1, Scene 1 of A Midsummer Night's Dream for my class. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to create a chart, a foldable chart, that analyzes characters, relationships, character conflicts. So you start off with a piece of paper, can be any paper, you fold it horizontally, and then you fold it horizontally again. Now I suggest opening it up, and then with your middle one, you're going to take those edges and you're going to make them go inside where they meet together in what I've always just called barn door. And really make sure those folds are really, really good. Since you had already folded it the other direction originally, this is going to help it from appearing really messy. Okay, so now you open it up again. I'm going to go quickly because I know that you can pause it. And what you want to do is you want to make 5 cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you're thinking about how to make 5 cuts where it's even-ish, if you cut directly in the middle, and then you just separate that by 1, 2, 1, 2. That way it's a little bit easier if you cut in the middle and then just do 2 cuts there and 2 cuts there. As opposed to going the other way, because of course what ends up happening is you end up with a really thick one at the end or a really skinny one at the end. You didn't quite eyeball it correctly. Okay, so then this creates the barn door effect where it's going to go back and forth and you have those nice creases. This can be, obviously, pasted into a journal later on. Okay, so your task is to analyze characters. So 2 sides, 2 characters, and the relationship. So I'm just going to real quick give you an example. I'm going to put Theseus on here, and I'm writing in all caps just so that way you can see it. And Hippolyta, and I'm going to try to fit it on even though it's all caps. Not too bad. Okay, and then over here you would have Aegis and Hermia, Hermia and Demetrius, Hermia and Lysander, Hermia and Helena, Helena and Demetrius. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and show you one that I kind of completed like that. So Theseus and Hippolyta, Aegis, Hermia, Hermia, Demetrius, Hermia and Lysander, Hermia and Helena and Demetrius. Okay, so I'm just going to real quick just do an example of how we would do this. So if you have not yet read the first parts of that scene 1 of Act 1, you want to go ahead and read it and figure out what's going on. But as we read it, we come to the lines at the very beginning where we have Theseus saying, sorry, I'm pulling it up. Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. He's saying, Hippolyta, our nuptials, which is our wedding, it's starting to happen. 4 happy days bring in another moon. So he's looking for, they're going to get married on the new moon, and he's pretty excited. But he says, but oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. So waning, as you should know from science, waning, right, is what's getting less and less. So they're going to be marrying on the new moon, right, and it's slowly waning. And he's complaining, he goes, oh, methinks how slowly this old moon wanes. So I'm sure you can imagine how he feels about marrying Hippolyta. When you really want something to happen and it seems like it's taking forever, you're excited. So what you're going to do, how does Theseus feel about Hippolyta? You open up the Hippolyta side, and in a complete sentence, you write something to the effect of, Theseus is excited and can't wait to marry Hippolyta. And I, of course, am writing in all caps just so it can be slightly legible, and I'm doing it while I'm standing, so sorry for the really bad handwriting. So, when I look at Theseus's, I'm going to say, okay, how does he feel about Hippolyta? He's excited. And then when I look over at Hippolyta's, that's going to say Hippolyta feels and however she feels about Theseus. So it's not going to really say Hippolyta feels. It's going to say Hippolyta is what about Theseus? You want to use both the characters' names when you're writing, because if you have it open, you can actually see it right there. Where if it just said he wants to marry her, you actually couldn't see what characters you're talking about if both flaps are open. Okay, then there comes the outside flaps. And the outside flaps, what you're going to do is you're going to record the textual evidence that supports this assertion in here. So what is our textual evidence? You're going to quote it, and that is when he's complaining about how slowly the moon is waning. Now, if it's a lowercase, you got to make sure you're doing it lowercase. If it's uppercase, you're doing uppercase. You're recording all those pieces of punctuation. So for this one, it's actually half of one line and half of another line. So we're going to write, but oh, methinks, how slow. Now, in my version, which would also be your version, it goes to a new line. And when we want to show a line break when we're quoting poetry, we do a slash. And you say, this old moon wanes. And it's ending at exclamation point, so I'm going to keep that piece of punctuation, close quote. Now, how to cite a source in a Shakespearean play. The way that you do that, instead of doing parenthetical documentation where it's just the page number, it's actually going to be different page numbers on different versions of the play. But the thing that remains the same is always the act, the scene, and the line number. So it is Act 1, period, Scene 1, period, and what lines are it? And I'm looking at it, it's half of line 3 and the other half of line 4, and I go 3 through 4, close quotation, okay? And of course, if I was writing an essay, I would include the author's last name and do all that good stuff, and I also wouldn't have this as a floating quote. But right now, what we're just doing is compiling textual evidence that supports our analysis of how a character feels about another character. So as you go through it, you're going to find all these characters have really complex relationships with one another, and we're going to discover at the end, how did they end up feeling about each other towards the end? Were they still in love? Did they still hate each other? Were they still mad? So that's how all that